Hello, John Robertson, your volunteer OSCAR librarian, back again with another video on eForm creation. If you're counting, we are 4 videos into the eForm creation outside of the eForm generator, or counting back from the beginning, we're 8 videos in, including the first 4 which use the eForm generator. I actually have a different e-form here today. I'm creating the patient referral form to the BC Cancer Agency. And I've done most of the work on this form, but there's a section here of fax numbers. And today what we're going to be looking at is how to add faxing into an e-form. This would be especially useful if you have an older form that you want to add faxing to, or if you have a form that you like, but they never put the faxing code in. So if we look down at the bottom of this form, we can see that there are a number of different sites that you can refer to, and they all have their own fax numbers. So what I'm going to look at today is a few things. I'm going to look at something simple where you can copy the individual fax forms and then you can paste it somewhere else so that you can fax things off. I'm also going to look at the 2 ways that automatic faxing is handled in OSCAR, depending on whether you're using the trunk of OSCAR and the well version of OSCAR uses a similar code, or whether you're using Open OSP. And the good news here is that you can put both codes into your eForm. They won't conflict with each other, and then you can have an eForm that works to fax in both forks. So the first thing I'm going to do is something fairly simple, and I'm just going to create boxes here where if you click on them, it will copy the number for you, and then you can paste it somewhere else into your faxing application. Full disclosure, I actually do not use an integrated faxing option. I have a fax machine that is on my local area network that comes up like another printer, and I simply print to the fax and put the number in that I'm faxing. So this would be useful if you have a setup like that. So we're going to add some code into the header of the eForm and then some code boxes into the actual eForm itself that'll show you where to click so that you can copy the numbers. Just going to move over to Notepad++ here and have a look at what we're doing. So this is the code for my referral form. And what I need to do is I need to put in some code here to have all of the fax numbers. But I also have to put some code in that allows me to use the clipboard to copy and paste numbers. So the first thing I need to do is I need to put some code that will allow me to copy and paste numbers. And if we go down here to this piece of code, copy to clipboard, it's going to look for a class name called copyable, and it's going to allow you to copy those inputs that have a class of copyable. You can also find this code on OSCAR Galaxy. And in OSCAR Galaxy, you'll find it under eForm Magic Examples. I'll just show you the page here. And here in OscarGalaxy.org, if you look for eForm magic examples, you should be able to find this page. And down here on the side, I'm going to go down to copy on click here. And this is the code that we need using this script right here. And just below the script here for copying to the clipboard, it gives you an example of what you have to put in to the body of the eForm. So here we've got copy fax. It's copyable. We've also got a do not print in here, so it doesn't show up when you go to print the eForm. And then you've got the business here of the value, and that is the fax number that you're going to need for each individual input. Now, if we go back into a slightly updated version of my eForm, we'll see where that code belongs. So here is my eForm. I've got radio X boxes here for the site that you want to send the patient to. And I have over here fax numbers. And I'm going to make inputs that have a outline around the fax that you can click on. My first one here, I'm also going to put a little bit out the side here that says click any fax number to copy. And then we'll show you the updated version. So if I go into the Notepad++, you'll see here that I have a radio box here for Abbotsford. The first fax, I'm putting a span around the fax so that I can put some text at the end of it. And the text at the end of it is going to say, click any fax number to copy. So I've encased my input in that fax. The actual input here, fax for Abbotsford Regional Hospital, I've made it copyable. I'm using some CSS that I've labeled as link to give it a nice box around it. And then I put a title in it, so if you hover over it, you'll get click to copy. And then I put the value in, which is the value for the fax number. After the first one here, where I put that extra bit on the side, the rest of these aren't going to need a span. They're just going to be an input, and then the name and ID, and they need to be copyable. And do not print to. You'll notice in my first one, I put do not print to in the span, but these I'm putting it in the actual input. And then the rest of it is pretty much the same. I've got a title, click to copy, and I've got the value for the fax. And if we go to my updated version, now I've got beside these a button for each of these to click to copy them, and that little bit on the side there. And if I do click on this, 604-675-7204, like that, and then I go into somewhere I can paste, so I'm just going to open up a new page in my Notepad++, and I'm going to paste, and there you can see that I've pasted in the fax number. So you could go anywhere on your computer and paste that fax in number in. You can use it for your automated faxing. And that's the first step there. Now, once we've got this in place, then we can move on to putting the code that links directly to the fax programs. I'm going to get rid of this because we don't need it anymore. And now we're going to move on to putting in the code in the header for faxing from OSCARPro or OSCARwell, which is the same code that we use in the trunk of OSCAR. So scrolling back up to the head of this eForm, back up to my copy to clipboard, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some code in just above the copy to clipboard. That's the fax code. And again, this fax code is also found in OSCAR Galaxy. So going back to OSCAR Galaxy to that same page that's the eForm Magic Examples, and looking at the side menu here, if I click on faxing, that'll jump us down to the code that adds faxing capabilities. Now, interestingly enough, this code can also be grabbed from the eForm generator. So let's go into OSCAR, into the eForm generator, and click on Create an eForm in the eForm generator. And I'm only going to go down to the miscellaneous options here, and I'm going to click on Include Options for Faxing. And I'm also going to put a fake number in here. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom, and I'm going to generate the eForm by loading the HTML code into a new window. And in the new window here, the things I'm looking for are, I do need this jQuery for greater functionality. And I will also need this faxcontrol.js. So these lines of code right here, and we usually include the form print function as well. We also have a little bit of script here, which is a function set fax number. And that number that I put into the eForm generator appears here. And this is good for an eForm where you only need one fax number. This form that I'm doing currently, of course, has more than one fax number, and so we have to modify that script slightly. If we go back into Notepad++, as I said, I was going to paste some code just above the copy to clipboard, and then that will give me all the fax numbers that I need so that I can do the faxing from OSCAR. So an updated version here. I have the copy to clipboard code still, but above it, I've added this set fax number. And this code originally comes from the eForm generator, but we've added some more code to it. And this extra code also is found on the OSCAR Galaxy page. You can look for it. I've put fake numbers in the OSCAR Galaxy page one, and then I've put first recipient, second recipient, rather than like Vancouver and Abbotsford here, so you know generically what you're supposed to be doing. So in this code, the default number that I put in here was the Vancouver number. So you can see that the Vancouver number shows up here as well, and down here at the bottom. But I've also put in all of the other fax numbers here, and I've put them all in with a 1 in front in case you need to dial a 1 on your fax system. And I've also taken all of the dashes out so there's no confusion for your program. Once I've put this bit in, then you should be able to fax from any of these numbers. And because of the name beside the number, you can find out which of the sites you're faxing to. And the last thing that we need to do to make this run is we need to make sure that this function, set fax number, is in our startup so that it runs on startup. So just scrolling up here to the startup here, I'm just putting another line in here. Set fax number, and that will run it when the form first opens up in OSCAR. The next thing I'm going to do is add the code for Open OSP for faxing. And as I said earlier, these two codes don't conflict with each other, so I can leave the code that I've got here, and I can add the code for Open OSP to the form. The Open OSP code actually is in the body, and it's in the hidden inputs in the body. So if I go down here to my hidden inputs, what I need to do is I need to add a bunch more to my hidden inputs. If you just have one fax number for Open OSP, you will need to have a recipient and a recipient fax number. If you have multiple fax numbers, you will need a fax num list. So going to one of my other forms, I'm just going to show you another form where I have a single recipient. And here in this form, you'll see I have a type hidden input, and I've named this recipient, and that's important that the name and the ID is recipient. And then the value for that is wherever you're faxing this to, in this particular case, the Complex Chronic Disease Clinic at BC Women's Hospital. I also need a recipient fax number, and this is also important that the name and the ID are exactly like this. And then the recipient fax number has to have a value that is the fax number. And again, I've put this in without any dashes, and I put a 1 in front of it in case you do have to dial long distance. But if we go to the version of the form where we have multiple fax numbers in an e-form, then what we will need is a fax num list. So in the fax num list, again, it's important that you name it this way. It is hidden, and I've also made the class hide so that it does not show up anywhere when you're printing. And then we've got a list of the numbers, which are the value, and then the option, so Abbotsford, Kelowna, all of them down here. And that's how you set it up for Open OSP. And now this e-form can be used in either version using the automatic faxing. Again, this code is also available on OSCAR Galaxy if you need a reference. Hope this was helpful for you. See you next time.